Read, Right, and Wrong is brought to you by the team at City Limits Publishing. City Limits Publishing is a small, independent press created by authors for authors. You can best support the podcast by heading over to citylimitspublishing.com to browse our ever-expanding library featuring unique reading experiences in all genres. Sign up for the City Limits Publishing Book Club and get one new release of your choice delivered every month alongside a curated classic book. Learn all about this and more at citylimitspublishing.com. In the meantime, let's get right into today's episode. Hey there, everybody. What's going on? This is Read, Right, and Wrong, the in-house author chat show at City Limits Publishing, where we discuss everything we've read, what we're writing, and what's wrong with it all. I'm your host, Peter Fenton, and today we are talking all things young adult with... Shoot, I did not confirm how to pronounce your last name.
It's Rhiannon D'Averc.
Rhiannon D'Averc.
D'Averc, that's it.
D'Averc. Yeah. Today we're talking all things young adult novels with Rhiannon D'Averc, whose new book, MIRA'S WAR, is just released. Rhiannon, welcome.
Thank you.
So you are across the pond, across the Atlantic Ocean.
I
am right on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean here in the Philadelphia area. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So I actually work day to day as a ghostwriter and author.
Okay.
And I also run a magazine called London Runway, which is an indie fashion publication sort of focused on sustainability and diversity. So
very nice.
Things. Yeah, I'm very busy, but I love it. I love every minute of it. No two work days are the same. I live here in Kent with my husband, Jared. And it's just been the two of us rattling around in an apartment for the last year while we've been on lockdown.
Yeah, it really has been a year, hasn't it?
It's literally been a year.
Yeah, literally a year. We're recording this in mid-March 2021, and we're coming up on the day the world shut down last year.
Yeah, literally the day of my last in-person meeting. The anniversary is coming up.
Yeah, what day was that?
I can't remember the exact date, but it was the 20-something March, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, my last day in person, I had been working in theater, and we shut down on March 13th. So we're right up on that day.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, thank you for finding the time to join us on the podcast today. We really appreciate that this worked out, even with the time difference and your very busy life running a fashion magazine and ghostwriting. So why don't we transition into our first segment, recent readings. So Rhiannon, you have written young adults, and you've described yourself as a crime author as well. What sorts of books do you like to read? Do you sort of read in the genres you write?
I do, generally for market research. I actually, up until I was probably about 25 or something ridiculous, I genuinely only read classic literature. I was a complete snob. I kind of laugh at myself looking back, because I just literally read Dostoevsky and Dickens and stuff like that. I made a couple of, I discovered Haruki Murakami when I was 18, so that was a bit of a revelation. Then it was the Hunger Games when I was about, I don't know, 20 or something. Mm-hmm. And gradually I just kind of was like, hey, I should probably read current literature. That sounds like a good plan. And you know what? It's not all that bad.
Yeah. So what are you currently reading? What have you recently read?
I'm in the middle of a massive Cassandra Clare binge at the moment. So late last year I reread the whole Shadowhunters series. Then I read whatever the next one, the Infernal Devices, I think, series. Mm-hmm. And now I'm reading all kinds of supplementary materials. I get to the end of a box set and I order another box set on Amazon. That's kind of how it's going at the minute.
Cool. And what sort of genre is that series?
It's young adult. I guess young adult fantasy. So it's not dissimilar to what I'm writing, but also just it has that added fantasy element.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And Mira's War is more dystopian young adult.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a bit more gritty. Definitely no magical creatures flying around to save everyone from the
No.
hellhole that they're in.
No fantastic beasts.
No.
No. No, no. So what are some of your favorite all-time books? So you had mentioned a couple of your other favorites. But
Mm.
if you had to pick, like, what is the one essential reading, what would you say it is?
The one book for me has to be The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde.
Yeah.
It's going back to my classical roots. But yeah, I literally have 5 or 6 copies of it because people just keep giving it to me because they know how much I love it.
Huh.
It's just,
Are they like all different editions, like with different cover
yeah,
art and
exactly. There's actually, I had a German friend about 10 years ago who actually gave me a copy that had my face on the cover. He got it printed specially. That
huh.
was pretty cool.
That is really
um,
cool.
yeah, but it's just something that every time you read it, there's different layers of meaning and different hidden subtleties that you didn't notice on any of the previous readings. So
Yeah.
you can always get something new from it.
What is something recently that you've gotten from a reading of Dorian Gray? I've never actually read it myself, so
Mm,
I
I think
know vaguely the story because there's that old joke. I love spoiling the end of Dorian Gray. Never gets old.
yeah, that's a good joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting about it is that as you grow older, you you know, when I was a teenager reading it, I was kind of like, oh yeah, what a great time he's having. But you get older and you start to see different implications and stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
you see things from the point of view of the adult rather than the teenager, and it's really interesting to see how your own internal morality can change over time the more experience you have of the world.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Yeah, definitely. Um like when I read things that were written for teenagers, again, now that
Mm,
I am no longer a teenager, I'm starting to empathize a little more with their parents, even though I'm not a
exactly.
parent myself.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I had the same. I was watching a film. I don't even remember which one it was now, but it was some young adult film that I hadn't seen back when I was a teenager.
Hmm.
Finally got around to watching it, and I was like, you know what? I think I missed the boat because I'm with the dad that's telling the kid off and telling him to go to his room right now.
Yeah.
Like,
I think I had that experience when I oh which YA series was it? I don't think it was Hunger Games. I don't think there's a strong parent presence in the Hunger Games, is there?
no, no.
No. I don't remember, but there was some young adult book I was reading recently. I was like, I can't get into this because I'm just on the dad's side through this.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny.
Yeah. So, what about underrated books or authors? So, of course, Dorian Gray, Oscar Wilde,
Mm-hmm,
very
mm-hmm.
very famous story. Are there any books that you've come across that maybe they're old or newer that most listeners wouldn't know about?
Yes, there is an author who is an indie author called Cole McCade, and I think genuinely that he is the best person writing anything right now. I mean,
Huh.
genuinely, it's that good, and he puts
What
out
does
an
he write?
output that's it's crime fiction, and he has these two gay detective leads. So for
Yeah.
my other series that I write, it's gay detective. So obviously, when I was doing my market research, I came across this guy, and I genuinely had a moment of like, oh, what am I doing? I can't compete in this market. This guy's the best writer I've ever read in my life. This is
Yeah.
ridiculous. I mean, it's incredible, and he's a
Yeah.
nice guy too. You know, we've interacted on Twitter, and you know, he even helped me out by sharing his book, my book, in his newsletter. So yeah, can't
Cool.
recommend him enough, actually.
Gay
Yeah,
detectives. Interesting. So
yeah.
are they dating each other?
Not at the beginning, but yeah, eventually.
Cool. Yeah, we love to see that. I love to see
Yeah,
that.
definitely.
Yeah. Well, cool. So is there anything else you want to say about books you've read or books you're reading before we transition into our next segment?
I mean, look, I have a 52 book a year reading challenge that I do every year. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we could be here literally all day if we don't limit it.
Sure, sure. Okay, so for the sake of time, why don't we move on? We have a very
Sure.
exciting book to talk about. So let's talk about our
I
next
hope.
segment, writing away. So
Yeah.
your book, Mira's War, is out right
Mhm.
now.
It is.
Tell us about
I
it.
know, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So it's a story that follows a young girl or a young woman called Mira Helling.
Hmm.
And she comes across this diverse cast of characters set in the year 2040 in London. Definitely not the London as we know it now, but it's kind of a worst case scenario vision, shall we say, of
Hmm.
what could potentially come to pass. And it's, her and all of her friends kind of navigating through this landscape, both politically and physically.
Cool. If you had to compare it to any famous books, what would you
Mhm.
say the story feels most like?
I would say that it does feel similar to the Hunger Games, although not the first book, more like the third book when they're actually, trying
Hmm.
to bring down this evil regime and trying to fight in the streets. It's not directly attacking the government as such. It's more like the government is attacking them, and they have to figure out how to survive that.
Sure.
So there's underground meetings. There's a secret society. There's police raids. One of the characters actually gets kidnapped by the police and taken in for questioning.
Hmm.
All this kind of intrigue going on.
Yeah, I did really get the Hunger Games vibe from the bit of it that I've
Mm,
read so far. I yeah, that definitely resonates. The Hunger Games later books,
yeah.
um, and the more British take on it, since Hunger Games, I believe, is set in North America.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Um, so where did this book come from in your mind? I mean, it had to come from somewhere, of course.
Mm, yeah. I literally just think it was a case of looking at what was going on. So I'm a more liberal kind of voter. I'm all about civil rights and
Hmm. Oh, gay
equality.
detectives, right?
Well, yeah, exactly right. And then I kind of look around. I think every single election that I've voted in my entire adult life, the rest of the country has voted the opposite way. So
Yeah.
it's hard not to get kind of beaten down by that and to look around and say, but can't you see what you're doing to us, to the country, to people, poor people, disadvantaged people who need help, and you're not giving it to them. And it grows from there. And so interestingly, I actually first wrote the first draft in 2009.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, and in that draft, I had written literally that the EU had failed and no longer existed,
Uh-huh.
no longer existed. And now here we are 10 years later, more than 10 years later, and that's actually reality. So that's
Yeah.
more than a little terrifying to me.
I wouldn't have guessed that. I would have guessed that you had written it after the Brexit vote,
Right?
if I
Exactly,
if I
exactly.
had to guess. That
Yeah.
is eerily prescient.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I look at some of the other stuff that I wrote in there, but there's no United Kingdom either, and we're looking at this thing like Scotland is trying to leave. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, okay.
I mean, maybe you should get a career as a fortune teller on the side.
Well, maybe, yeah. I don't know if people want bad fortune, so
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. You can always clean it up a little bit, you know.
yeah,
Say something nice and
yeah. There will be
generic
lots
enough.
of business opportunities for British businesses in Britain. There you go.
Yeah. It's all about spinning. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. So so is there so what about these characters? So there's a bit of an ensemble going on in
Yes.
Mira's War, right? It's told from a couple different perspectives, as far as I know.
Yes.
Um, so were these characters based on anyone in your life or in the public eye?
Um, a bit yes and a bit no.
Yeah.
If I was to take specifically the character Nancy Boy, he is based on this guy that I saw once. I never spoke to this guy. I don't know who he was, but I was in London. I was actually at the Roundhouse in Camden, which is a music venue, just waiting outside for a show to start. And I saw
Mhm.
this guy, and he was on the opposite side of the road, and he was walking, and he was dressed in like leather jeans or leather trousers, whatever you want to call those, black shirt. He had a midnight blue, sparkly feather boa around his neck. He was smoking a cigarette, and he had the same matching blue eyeshadow on. And this
Ooh.
guy, he walks down the road towards us. There's a crossing right in front of us, and he doesn't pause. He just walks directly across the road without looking in either direction. He's taking a drag on his cigarette while he's doing it. He doesn't
Oh,
care if he gets run over by a car. He doesn't care if he gets lung cancer. He's just a cool guy. And I was like, Jesus, that's a character right there.
yeah. Oh,
And that was
definitely.
it, like snap straight into it. And I literally began building it from that night.
Wow.
And I think a lot of the others as well. I mean, there's a scene at the beginning where there's these two kids, Rosa and Maxim, who were sitting in a train station, and I literally spent a lot of my youth in a train station waiting to go to school, and I would see people, and I kind of just drew on people that I'd seen. So yeah, it's based on people, but it's not necessarily based on a person that I could point to in a crowd, kind of thing.
Sure. And I think that that does afford you a lot of freedom then
Mm,
to really create the voice in your head when you see this image of
exactly.
somebody in the train station or walking down the street. You can
Yeah,
sort of speculate how would this person talk? What would this person do?
exactly. Yeah.
That's not always the case when you base someone directly on a voice you know. I've never
Mm,
done that
mm.
before. I think that that's interesting.
Yeah, I recommend it.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't seen another human being in a long time though. So
Oh, that's true. That is true.
maybe
Yeah.
I'll just browse on social media.
Yeah, yeah. Just look at stock websites or something.
Or go on Tinder.
Yeah. That's one option, I guess.
You know, you can meet
Why
interesting
not?
people that way.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
true.
So so what in this book do you think, so you've written this book and it's being published by an American publishing house.
Yes.
Do you think that have you spent much time in the States? Do you know what might appeal to an international audience about your book?
No, I haven't actually. I've spent a little bit of time in the States over the years, but not significant. And I just think that London, as a almost as a character itself, has a lot of
Mhm.
appeal internationally. It's a
Yeah.
place that's instantly recognizable. It's got its own very distinct character that you don't find anywhere else. And
Hmm.
I think I think if you're not from England, or even if you are actually, it kind of has this sense of cool about it, which is really interesting. I think that translates.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, definitely. I think so many British stories have taken the U.S. by storm.
Yeah. Mm,
So there shouldn't be any reason to think that just because something doesn't come from here, it's not applicable to the American audience.
exactly. And I think that American audiences like kind of the gritty British shows that we do.
Hmm.
If you look at things like Luther, it's got that kind of realism, but almost too far to be pessimistic realism.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean,
Mm,
there is a distinctly British brand of pessimism that
exactly.
is
Yeah.
almost charming in a
Mm,
way
mm,
as an outsider.
yeah.
I can't imagine it's too fun living it. I mean, John Oliver is one of my favorite presenters on TV,
Mm,
and he will frequently mention how pessimistic he is as a Brit.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Interesting. So, what element of this book has become most meaningful to you in the process of writing and in the process of publication?
Mm.
Is there like a certain section or theme that you think really resonates throughout the entire book?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because back when I first wrote that very first draft, I don't think I would have said this, but it's the sense of community.
Hmm.
Um, the way that um, the rebel group kind of band together, the way they help each other out. At one point, Mira and Nancy go on the run, and they go from safe house to safe house because there's always someone that will give them a place to sleep, even though it's at a risk for them. You know, there's a kind of sense of looking out for each other, which I think, especially during this last year, I think we've all come to appreciate that a lot more.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important that we don't lose sight of that when we, quote unquote, go back to normal. And it becomes us versus them again, you know?
Absolutely. I think that is definitely a universal theme that's come to the forefront of everyone's minds in this year of COVID and all of those things that have gone along with it. I think that, you know, people really do yearn for community, and I think the relationships that matter in everyone's lives have become very evident.
Yes. Yeah.
And so these relationships between your characters and how they look out for each other, that might be a very welcome exhibition of this sort of thing in the time that it is being published. So maybe,
yeah, I would hope so.
So maybe this was the perfect time for Mira's War to be published.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it went through a lot of changes too since that first. You know, it was kind of sitting on my hard drive for a long time. And I think it's a lot better for having had the experience of writing so many other books in between.
Yeah.
I think the first draft was trash, basically.
It always is.
Yeah, right.
Like every masterpiece had a first draft, and that first draft was awful.
Yes.
Like I think that's universal, no matter where you come from or how much experience you have as a writer. I think writing only becomes great in rewriting.
Yes.
Like a story can be good, but it's just a matter of getting it to that level of great that happens when you rewrite.
Exactly. And having another pair of eyes on it helps sometimes as well. You know, you sometimes can't see the wood for the trees. I think in the first draft I had this long-winded prologue. There was a lot of telling, not a whole lot of showing.
Yeah.
And you know, I had an early beta reader who said, well, why don't you just show this? And then I ended up adding about 10 chapters. I was like, oh, of course, this is so much more effective.
Yeah. Definitely. So what has the response been so far? I mean, I don't know if you've had a lot of people read it yet, but of the people who have read your book, what have they been thinking?
Yeah, I have seen some comments about, as we just talked about, the community theme, and how that's kind of inspiring right now. Yeah, I'm waiting anxiously for Amazon to upload some more reviews. I know it takes like a few days to go through sometimes. I'm like, tell me what people think.
Yeah. Because the book's been out just a week at this point.
Exactly, yeah. So it's not very long.
So there's still plenty of time to build an audience. But did you have people read the book along the way before it got published?
I did at certain points. As I say, when I was sort of 19 and writing this the first time, I was like, oh my god, my friends from school, can you read what I wrote? But yeah, they didn't get very serious until much more recently.
Cool. So what's next for you? I saw that you have your other book series, and you have a couple installments in that. Are you writing something new right now? Are you thinking about ideas for future books?
Yeah, I'm actually, so I have the pre-order has just gone up for the next book in my serial investigation series. So I'm doing the final checks and edits on the ebook file for that. And then at the moment, actual writing wise, I'm doing some ghostwriting work, which unfortunately, I wish I could tell people about because it's actually really cool. I can't come up with a really cool concept, but yeah, my lips are sealed, sadly.
Yeah. Are you just to get a vague sense, are you staying within what you've normally written in crime and YA?
Yes. I also do romance. There's a huge market for romance. It's not something that I necessarily enjoy. But well, not that I don't enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy anything I get to write because honestly, you know, I'll write literally anything so long as I get a chance to continue writing. But it's not the best.
Yeah. No, I mean, I do sort of go along the lines thinking, if I'm not enjoying what I'm writing, what's the point of writing it?
Yeah,
So
because
I
the
think
audience is
to
really not
some
gonna...
extent, sorry, I interrupted.
Nice. I was just saying, if you don't enjoy it, the audience is probably not going to enjoy it either.
Right. Yeah. It's the same thing for writing comedy. If you don't find it funny, how will anyone else?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I've definitely found that in my own comedic writing journey.
Yeah, I actually when I write whatever I write, as long as it's not ghostwritten, I read it out loud to my husband first.
Yeah.
And I'm watching him really carefully. Like, I say a line as deadpan as I can just to see if he'll pick up that it's a joke. And if he laughs, then I know I've done a good job.
Right. Right.
Yeah. If he doesn't laugh, then I have to check he's paying attention.
Right. Well, I mean, I think husbands or other close relations are sometimes your harshest critics.
Yes.
Without even knowing it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite often I'll read like a really lovely introspective chapter where the characters are really getting to grips with their feelings and figuring out what they want to do, and he's like, "It doesn't really happen, did it?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Noted.
Yeah. People can be harsh. Yeah. No, I remember the toughest round of feedback I've ever gotten was from my dad. It hurt, but it also helps me get the sense of, well, if it's not landing with him,
yeah,
something probably needs to change because he knows me better than anyone else. So,
right.
Yeah. No, I definitely get that. So, anything else you want to say about MIRA'S War or your gay detective series while we're in this segment?
Yeah, I can give a little intro of the series.
Sure. Yeah, please
just
do.
in case anybody's thinking, gay detectives, tell me more. Well,
yeah, always tell me more about gay detectives.
Yeah, so it's called Serial Investigations. The two main characters are this guy Ram, who is a loudmouth, sleeps around, very openly gay, gets himself in trouble all the time, and he's an alcoholic. And then we have Will, who is his partner in solving crime. Wishes he was his partner in life, but he's not out of the closet just yet. He's Korean, comes from a very strict background, and he has a lot to deal with them in that sector. And he's also suffering from an eating disorder, and the two of them are completely broken and useless, and sort of eventually things make them bang their heads together enough that they realize that they're in love with each other. And then also crime at the same time.
And also crime.
Yeah.
What sort of crimes do they investigate? Are they murders or burglaries?
Murders. So what they do is they consult with the police because they've got a good friend in the police force, but they also take on private clients. So they might be dealing with like a serial killer at the same time as trying to track down someone's stolen jacket. It can be really polar opposites like that.
Cool. What reading level is this sort of series written at? I mean, it sounds fascinating.
Definitely adult, I would say. Yeah, there's obviously a lot of violence. And yeah, it's clean. It's not dirty, but yeah, definitely adult.
Yeah. Cool. So for the listeners out there who are interested in getting to know your work better and want some LGBTQ crime solving in their lives, go check that out. Where can people pick those books up?
They are all available on Amazon.
Okay, cool. So head over to Amazon or Amazon UK if you're listening to this across the pond and pick up some gay detectives.
I mean, you can't sell it any better than that, can you? Pick up some gay detectives.
Pick up some gay detectives. That's the dream. All right. So this is a good time to bring us into our final segment for today, all the wrongs. So, Rhiannon, let's get candid. So let's start with other writers and other books. So is there a book that someone told you that you had to read it and you picked it up and you finished it and you were like, that was it?
Yeah, I mean, probably quite a few.
Yeah.
Um,
What's
I
one of
always,
them?
I always remember feeling that way about the Harry Potter books, especially the last one. It felt like the editor was just like, "Hey, you're J.K. Rowling. You can write whatever you like. I'm not going to teach you work anymore. Just carry on." It was so badly edited, really. Which now that I know that she's a terrible, terrible person, it's probably fine. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, less said about that, the better. But yeah, I kind of get that way with a lot of, kind of the old school, very male detective oriented crime writers.
Yeah.
Especially and legal drama kind of writers as well. Quite often I pick them up and I'm like, okay, and
And
it's just why is this guy so popular? All right. Not to say that there aren't. I mean, like people like Yo Nesbo, on the other hand, absolutely killing it. No pun intended.
yeah,
But yeah, a lot of them are just kind of like, all right. I mean, like James Patterson is kind of okay, but that's kind of it. Just okay.
certainly something.
Yeah.
So what about you as a writer? So
Yeah.
are there elements where you have felt you've gotten it wrong in your own writing?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, sometimes especially when I'm writing crime, there is a certain manipulation of reality that has to happen in order to create plots. Sometimes, you
Yeah.
can't quite have it following. I try to be realistic as possible and have things like, okay, they're going to have to wait several days for the post-mortem to come through because it doesn't just happen immediately, like it does sometimes in books or in shows. But then there's also, you have to kind of lift reality sometimes to make your detective the hero.
Yeah.
In reality, actually, it probably would have been someone, in the medical team or somebody else that would have spotted the problem right away. And I do sometimes look back and wish, like, all I had to do was write in that the medical examiner was a terrible drunk, and we would have solved this entire thing because everyone would have gone, "Oh, he missed it. That's fine." I could have solved that very easily, and I didn't. Yeah, because I do sometimes get reviews that go, "Hey, the medical examiner would have seen that," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know he did, but it's fiction here."
Yeah. How no, I mean this is of course a question that I have as a gay man myself. How did what sort of ways did you go about writing gay characters not being a gay man yourself that I know of?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm definitely not. I am, however, a bisexual woman, so those kind of fears about being different when you're growing up, I can relate to that kind of stuff. And also, it's just kind of a romance. Like, does sexuality have to come into it? It's a romance between two people, and that's, love is love no matter what form it takes. So, yeah, from that point of view, it wasn't like I was consciously like, oh my god, they're gay, so they have to do gay things all the time.
Right. Yeah. I think that it is always a delicate balance when you're writing a queer character, because you want to do them justice as a human being.
Yeah.
And write how they actually are, but you also have to, it is one of those things where you do have to go out of your way to mention it. And especially I found that as a gay man myself, I have to go out of my way to mention it to some people. And it's just finding that balance of being a person and, as a writer, creating a person. It's always in moderation. It's always, it's a delicate balance.
Yeah, you have to make a point clear, but you don't want to create a caricature.
Right, exactly. So have you had any bad reviews of your work just in general?
Oh yeah, definitely. You some I one of the ones that kind of hit me quite hard early on actually was the very first book in this series.
Mm-hmm.
I had sent them out to a few notable people, sort of in the same genre, and I've been, chatting to them for a few months on Twitter, and I kind of took the plunge and said, hey, would you mind checking out my work? Maybe give me a quote for the cover or something. And I had one writer who was that same kind of genre actually that I mentioned earlier. So, the old school male detective kind of stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
Who sent it back and said, yeah, this is why I don't usually do this kind of exchange. It's because, I can't read this kind of work. It's disgusting. Homophobic basically comments. And I was just like, Jesus Christ, all right. I think that's quite hard to, I mean, obviously it wasn't something that was wrong with my own writing, so I can take that silver lining side of it, but I was just like, geez, dude, really?
Yeah. It's tough. It's always hard to hear any bad review, any criticism. Yeah. It's like, well, this is my baby. I spent a lot of time making it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, what are you coming for my baby for? Yeah, no, I do sometimes read, bad reviews that say something like, I just couldn't get into it, or, oh, you know what? I had a whole spate of reviews at one point about people expecting there to be more of the romance element, even though, like, I told them, like, it's a slow burn, and when I mean slow burn, I mean, like, it takes 5 books for them to get together. You're going to have to be patient. People are like, oh, I want them to be having sex immediately.
Yeah.
This book wasn't for you then, so that's fine.
They have sex and they solve crimes.
Yeah, that's kind of what they were looking for, I think. Maybe just the sex, actually. The crimes could probably have been left out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. It seems like you're on your way. Something that I am curious about your profile, just in general. You are a ghostwriter as well. Yeah. What is that process like?
A lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I work with a number of publishers. I occasionally take on individual clients, which will be someone who's had a book idea and they don't know how to write it. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, I work with publishers and they will have an idea for a new series, and we will go for it and create a new series together. It can vary from client to client. Like, some people will give you a whole plot and a character outline, and they just want you to write kind of by numbers and fill it in. And then I have other clients who are just like, hey, write me something.
Yeah. That is interesting. So are you paid like a flat sum up front, or are you paid by the word, or how does that work?
Yeah, we do a flat sum. I mean, I have a per word rate in my mind, but just from a business perspective, I usually tell the client the full fee because it seems to get better results. They don't need to know what the price breaks down to exactly.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And so how did you get started doing this?
Yeah, I actually started I started blogging when I was at university. I mean, I've always written fiction, but for a very long time, I mean, I wrote a book when I was 11, which was say, absolutely terrible. Very derivative.
Well, if you wrote a book, it's like what they say about a dancing bear. The phenomenon of a dancing bear is not that it can dance well; it can dance at all.
Yeah, but I never did anything with any of them. In fact, some of them are still sitting on my drive. But anyway, so I started blogging. By the time I finished university, I'd been headhunted by a company to write blogs for them. Mm-hmm. So then I went into copywriting. I did about 8 years or something. Just writing articles and blogs and just brain-numbing things. But during that time, I gradually and slowly picked up. Started with one ghostwriting client for an actual book. It was actually a novel at that time, and then I picked up another, and I gradually realised that I could actually do this kind of writing that's much more fun and get paid for that. So I transitioned to where I now have. I've got 2 clients that I still write copy for, and that's because they're A, very good at paying me, and B, long-running clients that I trust and have a good working relationship with. But yeah, so I don't do fiction. I don't do non-fiction anymore at all. So it's kind of come full circle back to where I started, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no
Rhiannon, it really has been wonderful talking to you today. I'm so excited that your book has come out with City Limits Publishing, and I really can't wait for everyone to read it. I can't wait to finish it myself.
Yeah.
You can.
No, I just know what you think of it.
What's that?
I just know what you think of it.
I really like it so far. It's one of those things where, I mean, I am very busy with my work and my own writing, but I've been working on some of the formatting for it. So I did get to skim. I got to skim read as we went along, but now that I am starting from the beginning, it's nice. It's a really good book. I'm enjoying it. It's a page turner, if you will.
Good.
Oh. So for the listener out there, you can get your copy of MIRA'S WAR everywhere books are sold. So you can get it directly through the City Limits Publishing website, or you can order it through Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Those are the big ones. Rhiannon, thank you so much. Any final thoughts for our listeners? Where can people find you on social media?
I am on Twitter a lot. I'm at Rhiannon D'Averc, very simple. And I'm on Instagram as well with the same username. Although not so much book stuff going on Instagram. So yeah, Twitter is the best place to find me. And also Rhiannon D'Averc.co.uk for pretty much every link you could ask for.
Great. Well, thank you all for listening. I'm Peter Fenton, and this is Read, Right, and Wrong. What are you still doing listening to this episode? Hit pause, head over to citylimitspublishing.com, and find your next book. I'm your host, Peter Fenton. You can find me online at bypeterfenton.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at peterfent. Have a great day, everyone.